Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's Fight Chat Friday, where we're going to be looking at the minus 63 senior male division from the World Championships in Ireland 2017. And it really jumped out at us this week because of the quality of competitors that all met in the early rounds, long before the medals. And what we really want to talk about this week is just being prepared to shoot out of the blocks round one, and some good illustrations this week as to why that's absolutely necessary.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Fight Chat Friday. It's back again with just me and Adrian. So we should have some more guests again lined up in the future. We don't want to spoil you too early and have all our guests on it so soon. So we kind of have them on sparingly, I guess, just to keep people interested and have people. I suppose these are long episodes, so you need a bit of a chance to get through them as well. And so that's the plan. Today we're going to go with the 63 division from 2017. Some great clips there that we have from that. And Adrian, of course, was an organizer of that great championships, a fantastic event.
Yeah, it was an easy time.
Yeah, not only coaching, but also an organizer. So yeah, I don't know how you did that one. But fantastic event. And of course, Ireland are looking to host the World Cup in, when is that,
2024 November.
Yeah, so no doubt that'll be another fantastic event. So before we get stuck into it, if you're new here, make sure and subscribe. Hit that bell notification if you don't want to miss a video. We do a video at the moment every Tuesday. We do a live session, a practical session in Dobuk. And then on Friday, we usually have a Fight Chat Friday series, something like this, where we sit down, have a chat about sparring or some aspect of Taekwondo, maybe training, competition, whatever. And occasionally we have some very high-level guests and ITF legends to join us as well. So we have a few very, very popular people lined up in the next while. So make sure and subscribe if you're new. Of course, hit the video a thumbs up as well. And make sure, as always, if you're joining us live, get involved in the chat, get your questions in, let us know where you're from. It's a cracker of a day here in Ireland. So we had one of the first nice days we had in the whole year. So we had to come inside here, but we're happy to be joined by all of you guys. So let us know where you are in the chat. And we'll get stuck into the show.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the first thing to look at was, like, this is the first half, but just looking at some of the names that are jumping out at us from this particular division. So, one of the first matches we're going to look at is Rostik Ivanchuk, who's representing Ukraine, from Ukraine, but living and training in Ireland at the time. And then against Reuben Williams, and like Rostik had been junior European champion, Reuben had silver in Europeans. So like they'd be familiar opponents from that point of view. So definitely a high level match. We can see where Julio Carlos has ended up with a bye in the first round, and Luke McGrath has ended up with a bye in the first round. So they meet, their first match is against each other. And again, both champions in their own right at various levels. So an absolute hell of a match there. So Luke, how many times he's European champion in Slovenia?
He won it in senior there, wasn't he? He was bronze in Bosnia.
Junior world champion,
went up to 70. Well. Yeah. He's a fair few titles under his name, to be fair.
Yeah, and then of course Julio, I don't think needs any introduction to anyone here. So as you look through it, well, that's quite an interesting quarter, and then we have Timothy Boss in the second quarter there. And not to take away from any of the other competitors, we also have Matias Bustemante, who's very well known Argentinian competitor as well. Sitting in that quarter, and this is again all before you get anywhere near a final. So we want to really.
And we have a K down at the bottom there as well from Netherlands, who got a bronze in the World Cup the year before, which was a massive event with a lot of competitors. So to come through there and to medal is an achievement. So obviously no slouch as well. Yeah,
for sure. So really, it's kind of just hitting home that importance of you might fight your World Championship final in the first round or second round. You don't always have the luxury, and it's because we don't have seeding. Well, when I say don't have seeding, you can see in this division it was I think was there we go. Espen was seeded and Sanel wasn't there. So really, when you have the other person not there, you have no seeding because you don't need to separate those two. So in the end, this wasn't a seeded event. So you have some really tough first rounds, and you'll see from the action as we go through it that these are really close battles. So maybe we just jump right into that one with Rostik and Reuben, just to break us in gently.
Yeah.
And have a look at one.
By no means gently, though. It's a cracker.
No.
Guys start off straight away, great intensity. And anybody who kind of knows Rostik style, his intensity is quite high. He always brings that high intensity with him, and you can see he starts off right away trying to build that rhythm of his own.
Yeah, I mean, you would say like his intensity is quite high. It's the speed of the bounce, and the rate at which he's throwing feints and shortening the steps and all of that kind of thing. He really does try to keep you on your toes the whole way through the fight, and doesn't really allow you to settle into a comfortable tempo. Even though by nature he tends to be very much a push-pull fighter, so he's looking to squeeze into your space, pull you away, and as you advance towards him, as you try and take some space, it's usually then the counter blades or the front leg. So Reuben will know this, though. I mean, that's the only thing, because they have, I don't know if they've actually met before in competition, but they've been around each other in competition for a while.
Yeah, they would definitely be aware of each other. And like, of course, Rostik comes from a WACO background as well. And he's I think at this stage, he's like contact 63 world champion. So definitely well able to mix it between the point style as well, and to have that continuous style in his arsenal. So you can see here he's getting nice clear scores, which is a massive thing for the judges.
Yeah, I mean, you can always spot, like with these guys, when it comes to Reuben, like he is I suppose fundamentally a fairly straightforward front leg fighter most of the time, but he does come to hands quite well. And it really is kind of and the match ends up close. I think this one goes to a draw. And like, it's unsurprising where they tend to connect the techniques in a lot of the same way, and Rostik so far hasn't really gotten that clear defining lead that he often does get, so where he's gotten one or two clear scores and then he starts to pull away, and a little bit like Julio in that respect as well, not maybe as stylish in terms of how he does it, but once he has you trying to follow him, he can be very tricky to catch.
Yeah, and just for people watching as well, Rostik is in blue here and Reuben's in red. For people who aren't aware of the fighters, we take that for granted because we kind of know them quite regularly on the scene these days. But you can see as well that like this match obviously is in the first round, so like these guys have to come out, as the video suggests, out of the blocks firing, because that's it. Your World Championships is over for another 2 years if you don't put it all together in this 4 minutes, which is a very short time. So there's no real getting into it or anything. You can't afford to do that. So you can see that. I think that's one thing that really helps Rostik in his style of that high bounce and high intensity, because he doesn't have an option to start slow.
No, he really doesn't. I mean, it will usually be that, and because he tends to get his high value scores building off that front hand. He is going to have to come to you at some point in order to get those scores. And some people have tried to outweight him, and it's not usually a great option. But what's quite interesting is both of them are looking to deal with that front leg sidekick in much the same way. They're looking to jam or interfere with the front leg and bring the backhand to bear. And what you're waiting for when you have a match like this to see, okay, who's going to have a little bit more to their game, who's going to change it up first and try something a little bit riskier to see if they can take the edge. I mean, it's sitting at 2-2 at the moment. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, with Reuben, especially the fighter he is, and especially Rostik, it's not really a match where you're going to see lots of angles. It's very much a straight line battle. And how many times have we spoken about getting off first and being on top with both hands and legs if you can? It's pays so much dividends here, and you can see that that's where the scores are really coming from. The people who are able to get on top with the front leg, or else get above with their hands.
And they're a very interesting little exchange where, and we just roll back to it, coming into the next corner, where you can see Rostik kind of getting into contact with the hands, and Reuben scores a lovely, or at least lands a very, very nice counter sidekick on the way out of the ring. But you have to wonder, when you see these ones just here, which is the one that the referees see.
True, because, and the fact that he leaves the ring as well, you wonder, do referees score that?
Yeah, and it seems to be that's kind of a critical point for Rostik in this one.
Yeah, and there you like it's obviously a tie, so like it looks like it's 2-2. Is that right? 2-1.
2-1
to Rostik right now. Yeah.
And then he
And
travels.
obviously we spoke about that on Tuesday of ways people kind of exit the ring cleverly by throwing a back kick that wasn't really a back kick. Buys a couple of seconds and runs down the clock playing the game.
I
So
had that warning to get. So that's just you might you have to take it cleverly, and you might as well take a shot at a score while you do it. But it really is quite interesting when you look at exactly leading back to last Tuesday. You have jamming from both of them. You have them looking at cutting the psychic short by stepping into it, bringing the backhand to bear, finding the turning kick, which we've talked about previously, to open the match out a little bit. And then at various times in the matches, both of them have played the edge of the ring. But you'd have to say, yeah, right at the death of it, with the points in the bag, Rostik has definitely played a little bit clever there, not allowing himself to be rushed with hands and potentially giving away his lead.
And that's it at the start, isn't it? Because you have to be absolutely clued in, because these contests, anybody at the high level, and all these guys we picked out today are very good, high quality guys. It's going to come down to that small margin. So when it comes down to that small margin, then you have to be sure that you're kind of switched on and playing every single little small thing to your advantage, like we've seen with Rostik there.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that has Rostik and Ukraine advancing, and we then go to the match. It's actually the second round, but neither competitor has fought yet. So this is Luke McGrath and Julio meeting in the second round for their first match. And as we join this one, it's just at the start of the second round, and Luke is leading 3-1 on the flags. So
you see a big height difference as well.
Yeah, Luke is a monster that way.
Definitely. So obviously Luke is very much based off that front leg, using his natural ability of using his height well in that 63 division. And yeah, you see obviously Julio is trying to find a way to get past that leg and bypass that distance. And we spoke about his springboard kind of side kick style before, and that he's kind of using that to almost get him in and open up something maybe on another principle we've talked about, the contrast of maybe spinning around the straighter line shot.
Yeah, he's looking to come under here wherever it's possible, or to spin when the leg is high enough so that he can let his body drop under the leg as he goes. But fundamentally, he's waiting and looking to force a Luke McGrath mistake here for the most part, and Luke can play a lot safer at this stage.
Yeah,
and he can really just keep Julio on the edge of the leg if his distance and timing is good. And that just there is something that Luke does very well. Like he presents the threat with the front leg for 30 seconds in a row, and then all of a sudden switches gears.
Yeah, and that's so important, especially for somebody trying to understand the rhythm and try to get a read on you, like Julio is here. Like Julio is one of the most intense guys in terms of tempo and almost the kind of like the intensity that he brings, and obviously you can see that here. But trying to bypass that leg range initially is important. Is the difficulty in that, of course. And when you have a threat like somebody like Luke, so obviously he's trying to do that in a clever way, and Luke then obviously very clever is able to switch it up to keep people guessing.
But Julio has gotten great reward off of both that initial blitz that for me watching at the time, I thought Luke had managed to shovel out of the way, and then again that single shot with the hands just like that, and Luke very unlucky, you might say. He didn't get any score on that exchange there.
Yeah.
Which is, look, Julio was calling time, but the referee is the one that calls time. But sometimes the referee, the umpires will, they can see what's happening and so on. And the scores don't come. But
I'm not very sure where it switched over there, to be honest. It was
going back to Julio's blitz that Luke slipped. Julio got one on that, which brought it level, and then it went 2-1 the other way on the next.
So it was level first,
hands. Yeah, it went to 1-2-1. But again, and we're jumping back to the start of that again. But yeah, it was that element of nice. It's worth saying, like, Julio had to wait until 30 or 40 seconds into the second round with constant work rate to find an angle on that front leg to where he could get to hands. But the whole time he was doing that, he had kept that match super close. So although Luke was 3-1 up on flags, he obviously only had a point. There was nothing in that. There was no headshots.
Yeah, And how many times have we spoken about that as well, Adrian, about like trying to get the flags that are available to you. Like if you're 40 points to 1 point down on one flag and another one is 3-2, that's a massive difference. You're not trying to get all 4-0 on your side. It's what can you get to salvage the contest. So important in things that we've spoken about so many times. But I think the important thing there is experience kind of showed for Julio that he didn't panic, he didn't overcommit too early. He was confident that he was able to still see out the match, and he was always in touching distance basically.
Oh, he definitely was. And what happens again with some of the likes of Julio, well, you're not going to tire out Luke McGrath in the first round either. So
Yeah.
what you're trying to do isn't exactly tire out the other person in terms of like they're not reaching the end physically of their resources. What they are doing is getting mentally tired because they're having to focus on this testing, movement, interaction, and play the whole way through. So 4 minutes of deep concentration without making an error is, if not impossible, certainly very, very hard. And what Julio does is he maintains that focus, maintains that concentration, and on keeping the other person on their toes for such a prolonged period of time, it wears you down. So if you haven't built a lead, as often happens when he does get beaten, they'll end up building a lead of 2 or 3 points. And so they can let a lapse happen. So a lapse does kick in, and Julio comes back in a little bit. But if you've built a lead, you've got a headshot something, then fair enough. And we've seen that before with Maxime or with Ryan Shelley, where that's been a thing. But in this case, it's Luke wasn't able to prosecute that lead and really build up a 2 or 3 point lead on it so that he could absorb a punch. It was like one punch was enough to bring it back to level. A second punch was enough to give Julio a 2-1 lead. And
like when you look at the title of the video here, talking about tournament format in ITF sparring, I think that's a great point, because it's the mental fatigue sometimes, and some fighters that come to mind, like Luke Woods here from Ireland, Matt Cadle from England, some of these guys like Julio, who their style was like that intensity, and then they'd almost like outsmart you towards the last minute because you're just fatigued. And that's very important in a tournament format as well, like you said, because you're going through the possibly 5 rounds at a World Championships there to win if you're looking to get on top step of the podium. So that you need to be intense. And anybody who's following Julio here, for example, on Instagram at the moment, you see the work that he's putting in, and the physical training that he does, which obviously supplements his ability to kind of do this and to be at a high level throughout.
Absolutely. And I suppose the other side to it then is like, if you have been drastically cutting weight, one of the very first things they'll say is once you've lost about 2% of your body weight through dehydration, your mental performance will suffer. So, if you haven't, if you've had a drastic cut and you haven't rehydrated fully and got yourself ready for the ring, that's where certainly that last 1 to 2 minutes is going to crush you. Even if you're physically fine and you're still going at 100%, your brain will not be firing on all cylinders. It's going to be difficult. So let's flip over to the other half of the draw, the other quarter. So this is still all living in one half of the draw, and that's kind of the point of it. You've Ryan Shelley creeping through the other side of the draw there to the final, but
a different ring,
yeah. So we have Timothy Boss and Matias Bustemante coming up here, and this was in the other quarter.
So anybody who's not aware, Timothy here is in the red and Matias Bustemante from Argentina in the blue. So yeah, starts off, I think, a very front leg kind of a battle, and then anybody who knows Matias, he's quite unorthodox and unpredictable. He tries to lure you into that kind of mentality of thinking that it's a front leg direct battle, and then he comes out with something kind of almost wild. And you can see here, he's very hard to read then as a result of that. So it's kind of a tricky one early on, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the whole trick with Timothy is always like the front leg is what, carries him the distance and gets him into a touch. But once he does actually touch and make that contact, he explodes and the combinations flow. And he's very, very much in that vein of fighter where, once he's built that initial pressure over the distance, you've misstepped and he's got a contact on you. That's when the hands start to link with the legs, and he loves that bit of contact. So if he can get into that bit of contact and broken play, he'll improvise out of that or combine out of that and build some great shots.
Yeah, and that's why I think we see him that he's very, very successful in WACO because of that, because he kind of lives in that close contact, close range game much better, and he's able to pull shots off. But I think he actually he does well here, sticking to a more direct and a simple game. And we'll kind of see it as it goes through here that he kind of recognizes that Matias is a little bit unorthodox and unpredictable. And then he says, okay, maybe route one is the best way to go. And I think we'll see a very good shot in the second round here of an example of that, where he's just like, okay, it's hard to get a read on this in terms of the distance and the tempo and the rhythm. So let's just go route one. And I think it's a fantastic learning point here for anybody who's watching that may come up against somebody who's unpredictable or maybe against the grain.
Yeah, well,
Here's a
that's
good
it.
example of it. That's it, right there, direct one.
And again, it's simplifying the game state. So if there are parameters you don't understand, you bring it back down to those simple ones that you can understand and control. So what's the distance between me and my opponent? Where are we in the ring? And what's the tempo? And once you start to take control of those variables, you end up in familiar ground. It's like, okay, well, if I can control the distance, well, then I know what shots I'm going to be throwing. And it doesn't matter what they're going to throw because I'm in range for the ones that I need. And you know, you make it much more simple. So you're not watching for a reverse turning kick, a 360, a back kick, a blitz, or whatever. You're just worrying about the distance between you and your opponent and the opportunities that affords you.
Yeah, and of course this is easier to control when you are in the lead because you can use that front leg and then mix it up there like he did really, really well from Timothy. Of just kind of like what we said with Luke McGrath earlier, really, is just like playing with the front leg, and then when people come through that range, you can step through on your own hands. So it's a very intelligent way to go, and it's a great one to go with. Nice shot. If you're ahead, especially, but you don't always have that luxury, of course. But yeah, cracker of a match. Very, very close one. Obviously, Matias probably thought he got the better of that there, but a cracker of a match.
Yeah, and that brings us through. And, you know, as we're looking at that, as I said, this is your warm up, if you want, you know, in some ways for these guys. So, you know, to go in and jump into a match, the one thing it does do for you, though, is tunes you in mentally for the competition. If you come through on the good side of a battle like that, assuming you're still physically okay, you didn't get a knock or something,
Yep.
like mentally, you're queued up. You will usually be fairly sharp.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. But then on the flip side, if anybody remembers when we spoke to Ursha, remember that, Adrian? She was saying that she beat the former world champion in her semi-final, and that was her final. And then she almost kind of like was not really present in her thought process for the final, and she didn't get the result because of that. So that's the flip side of it then, I guess, as well, isn't it? That you can almost say, I've my hardest match over. It's going to be a breeze from here, and then you can get caught.
Well, it can. I mean, I suppose that no matter what, there's always some different way of playing games with yourself in your own head, or you know, getting carried away with the emotion of the thing. But you know, definitely you should be alive and awake after a match like that, getting you started.
Yeah.
So going on from that first match against Luke McGrath, Julio ended up with Rostik Ivanchuk, which is quite an interesting one for us from the Irish point of view, because we had an unusual situation that year in that we had effectively 363s that we could send, if not four.
And if all could are able to medal as well.
Yeah. So we ended up with Ryan Shelley actually winning the division outright, and Luke McGrath was certainly capable of doing it. And so with the two guys there and the height of them, they were monsters in that division. You know, Rostik had just narrowly missed out on the selection, but luckily he has a Ukrainian passport as well, or whatever way you want to call it. He qualifies, so he was able to go home, and home for him happens to be well, not home, but like his home from home happens to be where Oleg Sullivan is. So there was a nice natural connection there, and they've been at training camps and the whole lot of it. So so Julio ends up with Ireland again, but this time wearing Ukrainian colours. So let's have a look at how he handled that one.
Yeah, so this one starts off at a ridiculous high tempo, as you can always expect from the two of these guys. You see Rostik straight out the blocks. Usually Julio's trying to set that tempo early on, but you see that he's able to get that side kick, a great shot. And then there's a little bit of a kind of an idea of trying to get through that straight line, kind of what we talked about earlier again, where Julio's more angles and things like that, and try and find continuations, where Rostik is a little bit more direct and straight line usually.
Yeah, and it's quite disruptive because I think Julio's gotten used to an awful lot of people, you know, stepping off of his initial shots, you know, and looking to come in on their terms. Where Rostik has looked to step in and deal with his initial shot, the initial lift of the leg. And you know, there is a difference in the styles, of where Rostik really isn't a carry. You know, he doesn't carry his front leg. You know, it's pretty direct, which I think unfortunately lets Julio figure out what the range of it is. But the flip side of that for
Absolutely.
Rostik is he throws his hands off the exact same range. So you
Yeah.
do often get caught out when he does just throw hands from, as you said.
Yeah, I think Julio realized very quick not to point spar with Rostik because it's like his forte as such.
Yeah,
I don't know if the lads are aware of each other at this stage. Rostik was certainly aware of
of
Julio,
Julio.
but Rostik
Yeah,
was
for
just
sure.
up. He was just up as a junior, so I'm not sure if Julio was completely aware of him. But at the same time, he figured it out pretty quickly not to point spar with him. He was looking to kind of almost get more angles and like there now push pull and get continuation, because if there's nobody better in ITF than finding angles and being able to throw from anywhere, always being on balance, than Julio. He can throw shots from absolutely anywhere. So
For
obviously he
sure.
was able to adjust very, very quickly and find that out.
And what was
Yeah,
really interesting in this match are, as much as it's a battle each way, almost the whole way through the match, Julio was very much at a 4-0 position for certainly the towards the end of the first round and all the way through the second round. Um,
mm-hmm.
So it was always kind of close and engaging on the scoreboard, and it was always a
Yeah.
battle. But I don't think Julio was ever completely out of, I don't think he was ever out of control in this particular one.
Yeah, he never seems that way when he spars, really. Sure, like if he's winning by even 1 point, he just always kind of seems to be in control of the situation, which I guess is the essence of a champion. But I think on this one is very interesting that because the intensity was so high and they both matched it, it was hard for Rostik to kind of set his rhythm and his regular blitz, and Julio was aware of the regular blitz. But then he got through with some shots that were unpredictable, kind of like the spare jab and
Yeah,
almost kind of
the
like the
back
lunge
fist
shot.
into the what
Yeah,
we
the
call the
ones
old
that are
chestnut, the
yeah.
back fist to the head and the side kick to the body.
Yeah, the unpredictable ones. So Rustic did a great job there, and I think in the extra time, then we kind of really seen the best of the both guys there towards the last minute. They were both kind of at their own best game. They were after figuring out what they needed to do by that stage, and great fight, incredible tempo, and a cracker of a one.
Yeah, I think certainly for that last minute, what you started to see is that Rostik was getting his scores, but Julio was matching his scores. So,
Yeah,
you had the tale of two halves with the match where Julio built his lead and then the match leveled out, but it was just scoring 1-for-1 really at that stage. And, went for a very exciting match for the crowd and for anyone watching it. But, you were never getting Rostik an awful lot closer to being level with Julio. But
I think as well that it was on that one, Adrian. I think it was that he was kind of like very sharp in the direct ones and attacking Rustic, but then Julio was always trying to find shots in the kind of the flow of it. Where remember we spoke about there on Tuesday as well the importance of exits off hands. That
yeah,
maybe Rustic wasn't finding the shots off exits of engagement. We say not the exit of leaving the ring or anything. And I think that kind of made a bit of a difference, and definitely that's where Julio really kind of excels, I think.
yeah, and I think even the beginning in terms of Julio establishing his lead is that thing that we come back to in the chat with Neil Ernest of being first and last, where
Mm.
Rostik is more than capable of being first. What
Yeah,
Julio did maybe a little bit better is being last more often.
yeah,
So, whether he
absolutely.
started the engagement or Rostik started the engagement, Julio managed to put the shot on the end of it. And I think that, as you said, is the contrast almost between the points and continuous style of thinking, where Rostik, when he does well, he can be super clean because,
Yeah, very.
he makes very clean clinical scores, nice single shots. The referees get to note it down. Everything is good.
Mm.
And in particular when he's in the lead, that lets him build the lead, because there's no trade and we both go up a little
Yeah,
bit. It's like you attack, he's off the line, and there's one more point to him, and it makes it difficult. Whereas Julio has accepted that, look, even if I get hit first, I'm getting something back. So it stopped,
hmm
it stopped Rostik from ever really attacking the lead.
yeah.
So
We spoke about it in our top 10 skills, and it was in the ebook that we produced this week
mm,
as well, which is in the description, by the way, for anybody who wants a copy. But it was one of the things that we spoke about of. I lose my train of thought after that. What were we saying? What were we saying on that again?
I don't know, but the important thing was that you had to plug the ebook, so you
It'll
remember
come
to do
back to
that.
me. Don't worry. If it's
Yeah.
important, it'll come back to me. I'll throw it in eventually.
Well, where we did end up anyway at the end of all of that is that you have, in this case, Julio's had a hell of a battle against Luke McGrath. He's had a decent, very high tempo match, if not as much of a battle on the scoreboards. against Rostik, and now he's coming to the next level, and he's meeting Timothy Boss, who's come through his quarter. So the guys come together in the semi-final, really, and I think this is semi-final, isn't it? Let me just have a look back
I think
at our
Timothy
draw. It
got
is,
bronze in overall, I think, so.
But yeah, it comes back to that semi-final, and I don't know where we've gone with that one. Sorry about that. But we come to this semi-final, and the work that's been done by both these guys already in reaching that semi-final is huge. And so it's kind of set up for a bit of a bruiser. So let's have a look. And Julio starts off.
These two. Boom. Yeah, obviously these guys know each other very well. They've sparred in the final of the World Cup 2016, and I imagine they've probably come together before and that as well at some stage. But you can see that like Julio knows that he's going to start with that incredible intensity, and trying to keep it off front leg. We spoke about his springboard side kick before, and I think it's a massive weapon. And then it kind of gives him a little bit of an edge at the start of this contest. A nice headshot then based off that springboard front leg.
A very interesting thing as well, because there was like the hype was certainly very real around the match, and everybody recognized that this could have been a final. Everybody watching, and you see Julio turning to William Perlaza and celebrating the scores. And I watched this in full. Like he actually in regular time had 3 warnings for celebrating.
Okay.
Is unfortunate, because if he hadn't one of them, he would have won in normal time.
Right. Okay, that's interesting to know.
But the intensity there, look at it, real strong.
Obviously, very passionate, the two guys, as well. Yeah. So they're like, they know each other very well, and they know that this is as good as a final as well. So, this is one of these matches that I think Julio just came out of the blocks. And what I was actually going to say earlier when I forgot is that like the adaptability and the decision making in the 4 minutes is what makes champions. And there you see that he was able to kind of pick up on that and know how the match was going. And now we're going to see it here from Timothy. He knows that, okay, I need to adapt. I can't continue with this. And he changes it up, and he changes the intensity. Like what we just spoke about, he's not worrying about the first initial shot. He's looking to get his own continuation here. So it's kind of interesting to see that kind of come around time and time again.
Yeah, and what's remarkable, like Timothy's pulled this back to a draw at this point in time already, from where it was looking quite bad for him for a little bit. And like you said, both these guys know this could be a final. Everybody expects that this is going to be a hell of a match. And often when that situation emerges, they can be quite tame. Like they can be quite cagey and restrained. And neither of these guys have anything to do with that. They've both decided, look, if I'm going to be a world champion, I'm going to, absolutely fight my way to being a world champion. I'm going to do it. And like, I'm not going to do it by beating, my main opponent, whatever you want to call it, on the last second on one morning. It's going to be a case of I'm going to outfight him for the 4 minutes, and, credit to them for doing that.
Did that headshot at the end there make an impact on the draw?
Do you know what? Let's have a look.
Was it yeah, I think that's interesting to know, because it was nearly at the death as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, so we have a nice score here. This is 2-1 to Julio at this stage. -point.
Yeah, because he's on the back foot. It looks like he's in the lead.
Yeah.
That's how he kind of, like, he's moving. That's where he's very hard to hit when he has the lead.
It's already draw.
It's already a draw. So he's trying to play it out to get extra time by the looks of it then.
Yeah, it had already gone to a draw before that headshot, so the headshot probably hasn't actually been scored. It's only been scored on one.
Yeah, and then we see in the extra time, I think that it's very clear that Julio wants to start the same way he did it in the normal time. Yeah. And now Boss is into his own range as well, and his own rhythm, and he knows what he has to do as well. So there's what I was saying earlier when I forgot what to say about the adaptability. They now know and recognize what needs to be done, and I think that's why both of these guys are incredibly successful.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, at this point in time,
they're both at their A game here.
Yeah, there we go. That is the decision.
The -point?
The -point brings out Boss was 2-1 at that point in time, and the -point brought it to 2-2. Okay. So and we had that the back kick then again, and basically separated just for whatever reason, missing the last 8 or 9 seconds of that match, which is unfortunate. But yeah, the back kick from Julio goes in there and flips the score, and there's not much left in it at that stage, but it does obviously continue to the end. But like it's amazing like that. You have a look, and the minus point isn't for much. There's a little bit of trade with hands, but nothing major. Julio certainly doesn't show any recognition of the fact that he's being punched. But in you go. But that
And
again, for me, it jumped out in that match because there was 3 undisciplined warnings, we'll say, from Julio that potentially would have let him win it in normal time. That he could be critical of, except for the fact that everything else about it was really good. And then you've got quite a few warnings even in the extra time, and that minus point that Boss picks up there, which is unfortunate, but that brings it back to it kind of almost restores that point that Julio had given up for free in normal time. It's giving it back to him, but quite unfortunate.
Like we spoke about there, these guys obviously training. They have Euros in between, some of them if they're in Europe, obviously, and Pan Am's in the other side of the world. But obviously, these guys are training. Comes around every 2 years. We've World Cups and that in between. But the guys want to win the World Championships. Is the pinnacle of our sport. So you see that when it comes around, and then a decision is what was down to. Like people say, you shouldn't leave it in the hands of a simple decision like that. But this is the highest level. It's going to be split by hairs. It's very, very difficult to get a massive lead at the very high level. And the thing about that then is when the referees or when something like that impacts it, it can be a shame, and you can see people very disappointed in that. And it's just the beauty of it as well at the same time, you know what I mean? But when we were trying to get these videos here for this, when we were clipping some bits out, obviously we're taking out some bits to keep it interesting for people watching. You see the amount of time wasted, and the kind of the warnings that really aren't warnings, and they really, really disrupt the flow of the contest. And so sure. I think it is something that, like, we speak about it a lot, but it is something that I think that needs to be addressed within the sport, because you see, this is a fantastic division. I think myself personally, 63 is a great one because you have the speed, and then you have like the real good technique from these guys as well. So it's a nice in-between division almost. And then I think as well at the same time, when you have guys like that, the flow is massive. So you see with Rostik and Julio, we've seen it in Timothy there and Julio as well. So these guys in this division, the flow is massive for them. So when you stop that, I think it's quite a shame, and it kind of really disrupts the natural flow of what these guys can do and show off their real skill set.
Yeah, and I suppose it's what you want to promote. So I mean, you can see with Julio, with Timothy in that division in particular, the ability to generate some excitement, link shots together, trade off of each other, continue to move, find angles and explode. The only thing that really was stopping them is, a fall or an exit. There was certainly nothing else particularly bothering them. And, you'd love to see if there's an exit very quickly, back in, go, or, there's a fall, up on your feet, go. That would definitely be, somewhat better. But I think really for me, what settled in watching this, and we see this come up every championship, somebody ends up in the so-called group of death. And it's like, and how it comes up, by the way, for anyone who's watching, you'll be at a squad meeting and the draws will come out. And we, in Ireland, we might have 3 competitors in a junior division or 2 in a senior division. And it'll be, oh yeah, you managed to find that half of the draw. Well done, you, kind of thing. Where it's, sometimes it's because of seeding not being a thing. You can have 2 absolutely top class competitors meet in the first round. You can meet you can have the finalists of the Pan Americans, the finalists of the Europeans meet in the first round, and those championships have no bearing on each other. They don't create ranking. So it's certainly an argument for, and certainly most coaches would support the idea of some level of ranking. So giving a bit of credit to the placings of previous World Championships or, major continentals or so on. It would be great to see a little bit of that. But, in the end, it makes the first round very exciting sometimes when you get those, look what happened there. So some potential winner is going to have to go out. And so someone is going to slip through the draw all the way to the semi-final or final without really having to meet the world class, the top 1 or 2 in the world, just because of the way that it's worked out. And, it can be quite a challenge like that.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely a lesson in that, and obviously the idea of the video. Like for me personally, I was drawn in the first round for 2 World Championships in a row against the eventual winner in the first round. Not saying I would have went on to win it or anything, but look, they both went on to win it, Davide Messino and Fernando Marin. But that's the idea. Then is like when you bring that back, it's the idea of how do you train. Maybe you shouldn't be training and you like warming up with your rounds of right. We'll have 1 or 2 rounds to get us going. Maybe you need to really up that, and you how do you train then not to be a slow starter, I guess.
Yeah.
And how are you able to hit the ground running, or as the video suggests, they're firing out of the blocks. And I think it's an important thing to understand, especially in the very, very high level where the margins are quite small. You need to be able to basically hit the ground running, as we said, and it's more your decision making, and you're firing on all cylinders as well in terms of your body is ready to go. You're at your peak. It's essentially your final in the first round, because we can see the way it can play out.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing mentally that sometimes people do is, they plan for championships as in, right, I've got 3 good rounds in me, or I've got 4 good rounds in me, or whatever it happens to be. And to a degree, it's like, well, look, if you're fit enough to have, and you've worked it out, and there's going to be 4 rounds to take you through a final, and you're physically capable of doing that, well, that's fine. But really and truly, you don't get to decide when and where to apply the intensity, and that's different from training. And it's why live training is so important, because if we're trying to match the heart rate to the expected values and all the rest of that, what you end up with is a situation where it's like, yeah, there is a norm match that's sitting in the middle of that bell curve that doesn't take you to the extremes, and that might be what you expect in a couple of your rounds. But what if you're in this pool of death, and the 4 rounds that you have to fight to get to the final are all on the extreme right of that bell curve? They're all challenging you in terms of your mental concentration, your neural fatigue, your metabolic fatigue, your ability to like take knocks and bruises and bangs and come back. Are you ready for that? Because sometimes that's what's required to be the world champion or the tournament champion. It doesn't even have to be at that high level, where we all want to prepare really for that slightly more comfortable one, where you have, probably 2 really hard matches in the semi-final and the final.
Yeah.
And a couple to get you in there along the way, and that was handy. It was a good warm-up. The evidence suggests that, in quite a lot of divisions, a lot of the time, you're just not going to be that lucky,
That's it. Like, and it kind of reminds me of a story from Adam Shelley, who the World Championships in 2015, which he eventually won. His first round wasn't against somebody who he was aware of or whatever, and he kind of went out and almost did his warm up in that round, so there's the confidence in that as well, obviously. But then when you get that pool of dead, you don't have that luxury. So it's been able to work off both when necessary, and know what your body needs. And I think that's the key as well, isn't it? Know what you need. And we did a video on this a couple of weeks ago of how to prepare for a tournament, and how to prepare your body and your sleep, etc., and how to prepare the mental side of it and the warm up, etc. So obviously we'll put that video in the cards here for people to check out as well. But that's very important, because it is an individual thing. What you need for yourself individually will differ for everybody.
Absolutely. So really and truly, I suppose the message and the take-home message for this is, don't second guess what your division is going to look like or what way it's going to run for you. Be ready to fight your final in the first round, and maybe in the second round as well, and possibly the third. So for every time that a tournament lines up nicely for you and the matches get more difficult as you go through the rounds, remember that for as long as we don't have seeding, there is no guarantee that that's how it's going to play out. And so you might just have to fight the hardest route to the final that exists. And someone will do it, because someone will win every match and someone will get to the final. It's just your job to make sure
someone has to win.
Someone has to win.
Yeah, so maybe leave us know in the comments, whether even if you're not watching this video live and you're watching the recording of it, what do you think of the seeding, whether it's a good idea, whether it's not a good idea, and why. And will be interesting to see what people's thoughts are on that. And I think for me, a massive takeaway as well, and it's something that we speak about time and time again, is the adaptability within the 4 minutes. I mean, it's a very, very short time. And to be able to, we see the ebbs and flows here in the matches that we've seen, for going to draw, your opponent winning, you winning, and it just switches around so quickly. So the adaptability to know what you need to do there without having to rely on your coach to tell you or whatever is a
Yeah.
massive part of it as well.
Okay, so I think that's really us for this week, Richie. Our next session then is on Tuesday. We're live. We're going to be doing a little bit of live training, and we did just get news in Ireland that we there is daylight at the end of the tunnel for us, apparently. So from the 26th of April, we get to train together outdoors, at least for the younger students. And what that might mean for us is that, depending on how things go, our live sessions might not be extending beyond the 26th of April. So we'll see that.
So enjoy the last few.
There's good and bad to that. So if you have topics you particularly want covered in the next week or two, make sure to hit us up very quickly with those so that we can pick our topics for the next 2 or 3 Tuesdays. And we're really looking forward to kind of finishing off that series in style and moving on to other projects.
And happy Easter as well, Galina. We see your comment there. Happy Easter to everybody who's watching.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. See you in the next one, guys. Thanks as always.
Very best luck, folks. We'll see you soon.